Missing trucks. It was a busy time for the little engines of the Island of Sodor. Rheneas had delivered trucks of chicken feed, and now he was enjoying the beautiful view as he puffed back to the transfer yards. The thin controller was waiting for Rheneas. He had one more job for him. "I want you to take these trucks of slate to Thomas at the wharf," said the thin controller. "Yes, sir," wished Rheneas. So Rheneas coupled up to the trucks and steamed slowly away. Further up the line, Skarloey was taking on more water. Rheneas was happy to see his friend. "Hello," he chuffed cheerfully. But Skarloey wasn't cheerful. "I'm tired," groaned Skarloey. "I've been working hard all day, and I still have to pick up stone from the quarry. Then I have to collect coal trucks from the transfer yards and deliver them to the wharf." Skarloey's water was full, and he puffed sadly away. Rheneas wanted to help his friend. Then an idea flew into his funnel. "I'm going to the wharf," he thought. "I can deliver Skarloey's coal trucks for him. It will be a nice surprise," he puffed, and he raced quickly back to the yards. Rheneas steamed back into the transfer yards. "Why are you so excited?" whistled Peter Sam. "Can't tell you," cried Rheneas. He didn't want anyone to spoil the surprise for Skarloey. He coupled up to Skarloey's coal trucks. Biff, bang, biff, bang, clanked the trucks. Then Rheneas set off. Soon Rheneas was chuffing up a steep hill. "Pump my pistons," he gasped. "I can't pull my trucks and Skarloey's trucks. They're too heavy." So Rheneas chuffed back down the hill. He puffed into a siding, and Skarloey's coal trucks were uncoupled. "I'll deliver my own trucks first," huffed Rheneas. "Then I'll come back for Skarloey's." Now it was easy for Rheneas to steam up the steep hill. Thomas was at the wharf. He was waiting for the trucks of slate. "Hurry up and uncouple these slate trucks," wished Rheneas. "You're in a hurry, Rheneas," tooted Thomas. "I am," wished Rheneas, "but I can't tell you why. It's a surprise." And as soon as his slate trucks were uncoupled, Rheneas puffed away again. Now he had to collect Skarloey's coal trucks. Then there was trouble. When Rheneas arrived at the siding, the trucks weren't there. "Flatten my funnel," gasped Rheneas. "Where have they gone?" Rheneas was sure this was where he had left them. "I must find Skarloey's trucks," he whistled, and Rheneas puffed quickly away. Rheneas searched high and low for the missing coal trucks, but they were nowhere to be found. Rheneas was upset. Rheneas stopped at a signal. Skarloey puffed up. He looked very unhappy. "My coal trucks have disappeared," Skarloey cried. "If I don't find them, I will have to go to the depot and tell the thin controller." Rheneas watched Skarloey puff sadly away. "I wanted to surprise Skarloey," Rheneas sighed, "but I've only made things worse." Rheneas felt terrible. He didn't want his friend to get into trouble. He knew what he must do. I must tell the other engines about my surprise. Maybe they can help me find the missing trucks before Skarloey finds the thin controller. Rheneas arrived at the transfer yards. Sir Handel, Mighty Mac and Rusty were there. "Please, help me," Rheneas whistled. "Skarloey's trucks are missing and it's all my fault." He told them all about his surprise. The other engines were happy to help. "If we each look somewhere different, I know we'll find them," he tooted. Just then, Peter Sam puffed in with the missing trucks. "I found these trucks at the bottom of the hill," chuffed Peter Sam. "Do you know who left them there?" "I did," puffed Rheneas excitedly. "Oh, thank you, Peter Sam." Peter Sam was puzzled. And so was the thin controller. "You told me the trucks were missing, Skarloey," said the thin controller. He was surprised. Skarloey was surprised too. "They were, sir," wheezed Rheneas quickly. "It was a surprise. I wanted to help Skarloey, but I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Please, can I still deliver the trucks for him?" "Of course you can," laughed the thin controller. "Now we all know what you're going to do." Rheneas smiled, and so did his friend Skarloey. Now he knew about Rheneas' surprise, he could finally take a well-earned rest. Rheneas felt very happy. Thomas and the jet plane. Thomas the tank engine loves having buffers and a boiler that bubbles. He loves having wheels and a whistle that toots. But most of all, Thomas loves working on the Fat Controller's railway. It was the day of the Sodor summer picnic. The Fat Controller came with news of a special for Thomas. "You are to collect the children from the airport and take them to the picnic," he boomed cheerfully. Thomas was excited. He set off right away. The airport was new and all the engines wanted to go there. Soon Thomas arrived at the airport. He was excited to see the control tower, the huge hangar, and the red and white striped windsock. Then he heard a loud noise in the sky. A jet plane was coming in to land. Thomas thought it looked very splendid. Thomas chuffed over to the hangar. "Hello," peeped Thomas. "I'm Thomas and I'm a tank engine." "Hello," said the plane. "I'm Jeremy and I'm a jet plane." "It must be wonderful being able to fly," said Thomas. "It is," said Jeremy. "I can go anywhere I want. Flying is the most fun in the world." Thomas thought Jeremy was being boastful. "I like travelling on tracks," Thomas huffed. "I puff past farms and villages and see all the wonderful sights of Sodor." "Well, from the air I see the wonderful sights of Sodor all at once," said Jeremy. Thomas felt upset. Then he saw the children. They were waiting on the platform. Thomas wheezed quickly over to collect them. "I never want to talk to a jet plane again," he huffed. Thomas puffed over to the picnic. He was happy to leave the airport behind. But when he turned a bend in the track, he had to stop at a signal. Thomas heard Jeremy taking off, and then Jeremy flew right over his funnel. "It's not fair," huffed Thomas. "Jet planes don't have to stop at signals." Thomas puffed past the windmill, but Thomas could still see Jeremy. He was now high in the sky. Suddenly, Thomas saw a cow on the tracks in front of him. "Jet planes don't have to stop for cows," Thomas puffed sadly. Thomas arrived at the picnic. The blankets were laid out and everyone was having a jolly time. But Percy thought Thomas looked sad. "Jet planes can go wherever they like. I wish I were a jet plane," chuffed Thomas. "But engines can pull carriages and take children to picnics," peeped Percy. "Engines are really useful." But Thomas wasn't sure. Jeremy was jetting to the mainland, but dark rain clouds were gathering. And Jeremy had to return to the airport. Thomas was passing the airport as Jeremy came into land. Thomas didn't want to talk to him, but Jeremy called out, "Thomas, a summer storm is on its way. The children's picnic will be ruined." "Cinders and ashes," gasped Thomas. "I must tell the Fat Controller." Thomas reached the picnic just in time. "Quick," tooted Thomas. "There's a big storm coming. The picnic will be washed away." Everyone packed up the picnic as quickly as possible. And then they boarded Annie and Clarabelle. The children were sad the picnic was over. Then another idea flew into Thomas's funnel. He puffed quickly back to the airport. This time Thomas wanted to talk to Jeremy. "Please, can the children have their picnic in your hangar?" "Of course," said Jeremy. "What a splendid idea." Thomas was very happy. Soon all the children were having a jolly time, and so was the Fat Controller. "Well done, Thomas and Jeremy," he boomed. "Together you have saved the picnic. You are both really useful." Jeremy was happy to have helped, and Thomas had never felt prouder to be a steam engine. A smooth ride. Sir Handel is one of the oldest engines on the Island of Sodor. He's a dark blue colour and has a small number 3 painted on his side. Sir Handel is also known as one of the smoothest engines on the Thin Controllers Railway. Sir Handel had been working in the stone quarry all summer. The Thin Controller, Mr. Percival, was happy to see him back. "I've got a special for you," Mr. Percival told Sir Handel. "I want you to collect some trucks of apples. You must pull them very carefully or the apples will bruise." "Yes, sir," whooshed Sir Handel, and off he chuffed. At the orchard, Sir Handel was coupled to the trucks. He pulled them away very carefully. He pulled them around the lake, across the stone bridge, and he started to puff up a hill. Then there was trouble. His pistons popped, his traction rods rattled, and his boiler bubbled and bounced. Sir Handel couldn't go on. Peter Sam puffed up behind him. He was worried. "Why have you stopped, Sir Handel?" he whistled. "I have a problem," wheezed Sir Handel sadly. "It happens when I go up hills. I start to rattle and rock, and then I have to stop." Peter Sam felt sorry for his friend. "Could you help me up the hill?" puffed Sir Handel. "Of course I can," peeped Peter Sam. And he pushed Sir Handel and the trucks of apples all the way up the hill. When Sir Handel arrived at the station, the Thin Controller was very pleased. "There's not one bruise on those apples," said the Thin Controller. "What a smooth engine you are." Sir Handel was happy that the Thin Controller was pleased, so he didn't tell the Thin Controller about his problem. "Now I have another special for you," said the Thin Controller. "I want you to pick up sheep from the farm." "Yes, sir," puffed Sir Handel, but he was worried. When Sir Handel arrived at the farm, the farmer was waiting. "Be careful," said the farmer. "Sheep need a smooth ride." "Yes, sir," chuffed Sir Handel, and he puffed away. But soon Sir Handel came to another hill. His pistons popped, his traction rods rattled, and his boiler bubbled and bounced. Sir Handel couldn't go on. This time, Duncan puffed up behind him. Sir Handel told him all about his problem. Duncan was happy to help. With Duncan's help, Sir Handel delivered the sheep safely to their new field. When Sir Handel arrived at the transfer yards, the Thin Controller and Mrs. Percival were waiting. The Thin Controller was very pleased with Sir Handel's work. Now he had a surprise special for him. "Today is my wife's birthday," said the Thin Controller. "You are to take us to the top of Culdy Fell for a picnic." "Yes, sir," puffed Sir Handel. But he knew that the track to Culdy Fell was very steep. Sir Handel was more worried than ever. Sir Handel puffed towards Culdy Fell. The track was even steeper than he remembered. "I can do it, to the top, he chuffed. Then there was trouble. His pistons popped and his traction rods rattled. Inside the carriage, the picnic hamper burst open and the Thin Controller and Mrs. Percival were juddered and shuddered. Sir Handel shuddered to a stop. The Thin Controller was worried for his engine. "You're a fine engine, Sir Handel, but you're no longer a smooth engine," he said. "I'll have to send you back to the stone quarry. That's the place for bumpy engines." "Please, sir, I can be a smooth engine. I only shudder and shake when I go up hills," Sir Handel wished. The Thin Controller listened. "I see," he said. "Please don't send me back to the stone quarry." The Thin Controller made a telephone call. He looked very serious. Later, Sir Handel was helped back to the transfer yards by Mighty Mac. Sir Handel was very worried. He was sure that the Thin Controller was going to send him back to the quarry. Sir Handel arrived at the transfer yards. He saw Thomas. "Hello, Sir Handel," tooted Thomas. "Sir Handel, I've asked a special engineer to come and fix you," smiled the Thin Controller. "You're a special engine and you need special attention." Sir Handel smiled from buffer to buffer. He had never felt happier. Sir Handel was soon fixed, and now he could chuff cheerfully up Culdee Fell. The children in his carriages whooped and cheered. Sir Handel gave the smoothest ride of all. Follow that flower. Every day is a busy day for the engines of the Thin Controller's railway. They toot hello as they pass each other on the hills. Huff and puff at the transfer yards. And push and pull trucks at the wharf. Early one morning, Thomas was at the wharf. He liked the wharf. It was busy and he met a lot of friends there. But today, Thomas was shunting trucks, and the trucks were being especially troublesome. It was taking all of Thomas's puff to keep them in order. Then James arrived. "I am to collect a truck of flour to make cakes and bread for the Children's Harvest Festival supper," tooted James. "I wish the Fat Controller had given me that job," chuffed Thomas. "It would be much more fun than shunting trucks." James was feeling very pleased with himself. "First, I have to take on water," he whistled grandly. "Please shunt the flour truck over for me, Thomas." Thomas didn't want to shunt any more trucks. This meant his job would go on for even longer. "Bossy boiler," he puffed. Thomas found the flour truck outside the warehouse. He wanted to move James's truck as quickly as he could, so Thomas wasn't taking care. He biffed the truck very hard, and the door came loose. But Thomas didn't see. An idea had flown into his funnel. "I'll hide James's truck, then Bossy Boiler will have to find me." Thomas thought hide and seek was a grand idea. James came back from the water tower. He saw Thomas in the distance. And James saw that falling from the truck was a trail of flour. "Stop, Thomas!" whistled James. "Flour is falling out of your truck." But Thomas was too far away to hear. Thomas puffed into the warehouse to find somewhere to hide. More and more flour fell from the truck. James chased after Thomas. Thomas heard him coming. "How does he know where I am?" thought Thomas. "Thomas, the flour!" whistled James. But Thomas couldn't hear him. "James won't find me this time," he thought. Thomas was having fun. Thomas found another good place to hide. "James will never find me here," he hooted happily. But then he heard James's whistle again. "Bust my buffers," chuffed Thomas. "He's found me again." So Thomas puffed off. Thomas had reversed behind some trucks. "James will never find me here," he tooted cheerily. But just then he saw James come around the bend. "Thomas," puffed James. He was very cross. "You've left a trail of flour all over the wharf." Cinders and ashes, cried Thomas. I must have biffed the truck so hard that the door came loose. Thomas didn't feel cheery anymore. If I've lost all the flour, there'll be no cakes and bread for the children's Harvest Festival supper, he wheezed sadly. I'm sorry, James, he chuffed. I'll get you another truck of flour. Then you won't be late for the children. Thomas raced away. Thomas puffed and he huffed. He wheeshed and he whooshed. He had to get to the mill as fast as he could. Then there was trouble. When Thomas arrived at the mill, it was closed. Thomas looked around. He could only see empty flour trucks. Thomas felt sadder than ever. Dusty Dave the miller came to see Thomas. He could see that Thomas was very upset. I'm going home for my tea now, he told Thomas. But there's one full flour truck right at the back. Thomas saw the flour truck. But there were lots of other trucks in the way. He needed help. Thomas whooshed back to the wharf. He would have to ask James to help him. James was waiting. He was still very cross. Thomas pulled up alongside him. James, I know you tried to tell me about the flour, and I know I was silly, but now I need your help. James knew that Thomas was sorry, and he knew Thomas needed his help. So they set off for the mill. James and Thomas worked hard. There were lots of trucks to shunt, but they worked well together. The flour truck was coupled up to James, and he raced off. Thomas felt proud of his friend. Later that evening, the Fat Controller stood by a table of wonderful breads and cakes. The children were very excited. Thomas puffed by on his way home. Well done, James, he tooted, and James tooted back. Thomas was pleased James was his friend again. And Thomas smiled all the way back to Tidmouth Sheds. Percy and the Funfair. It was a beautiful morning on the Island of Sodor. All the engines were very excited. It was the day of the Fat Controller's Funfair. Children would be coming from far and wide. There was to be a special visit from the Chinese dragon. Percy was delighted. He thought the Chinese dragon was the most exciting thing of all. The Fat Controller arrived at Tidmouth. He had come to give the engines their jobs. Edward was to pull the merry-go-round, Henry the roller coaster, Gordon the fairground folk, Toby the bumper cars. James and Emily were to pull the Ferris wheel, and Thomas, boomed the Fat Controller, you are to collect the fireworks and the Chinese dragon. What's my job, sir? Asked Percy hopefully. You are to collect coal from the coaling plant. You must fill all the hoppers at the stations, ordered the Fat Controller. A railway can't run without coal, he added. This is a very important job. The Fat Controller left, and all the engines were excited. All except Percy. Coal, he sighed. And as he watched his friends leave for their exciting jobs, Percy felt very left out. Percy chuffed sadly over to the coal plant. This didn't feel like an important job at all. When Percy arrived, he could see a long line of trucks. "I wish I was pulling something exciting," grumbled Percy. "Not boring old coal trucks." Percy buffered up and pulled out of the depot. Percy stopped at a signal by a school. Toby puffed past pulling flatbeds full of bumper cars. The children in the playground clapped and cheered. Then Edward chuffed by with the merry-go-round. The children cheered even louder. Percy thought that Toby and Edward were having a wonderful time. Then an idea flew into his funnel. "Maybe Toby and Edward need some help. Helping friends is much more important than delivering coal," he wished. So Percy didn't deliver the coal. He left his trucks and he steamed after his friends as quickly as he could. Toby and Edward stopped at a red signal. Percy puffed up alongside. "Do you need any help?" he tooted hopefully. "No, thank you, Percy," said Toby. "We can do it," chuffed Edward. Percy was disappointed. Further up the line, Percy saw Emily and James. They were taking the Ferris wheel. "That looks like fun," tooted Percy. "I'm sure they'll need some help." Percy caught up with James and Emily. "This is going to be the biggest wheel ever," chirruped Emily. Emily and James were having a splendid time. But James and Emily didn't need help either. Percy was upset. Then Percy saw Gordon waiting at a junction. Gordon was pulling the fairground folk, but he didn't need any help either. Percy saw Henry crossing the bridge. Henry was happily pulling the roller coaster. Finally, Percy saw Thomas waiting at a signal. He was carrying the fireworks and the Chinese dragon. "That looks like the most fun of all," gasped Percy. But even Thomas didn't need any help. Percy was more disappointed than ever. Then there was trouble. Percy had spent so much time trying to help that he hadn't delivered any coal. Percy saw James. He looked very sad. "There's no coal at the stations," he wished. "We've all run out of coal." "Bust my boiler," cried Percy. "If the engines don't get some coal, the FUNFAIR won't open. All the children will be sad, and it's all my fault." Percy knew what he had to do. He had to pick up his trucks and deliver the coal as quickly as he could. Percy wished all over the island delivering coal to his friends. Soon, everyone's boiler was bubbling and their pistons were pounding. The engines were back on track. The FUNFAIR was ready just in time. Percy finished his last delivery of coal and arrived at the FUNFAIR as the fireworks began. The rockets soared, the band played, and the Chinese dragon danced. All the children were delighted. "The Fat Controller was right," tooted Percy. "Delivering the coal is a very important job."